It's just such a weird development of how this whole thing kind of got microwaved, and now it turned out with him committing to UNC today. Tell us a little bit about the process.
Yeah, so it started, I guess, with the Bob Huggins situation and him ultimately not being the head coach anymore. And so there's a loophole I don't think anybody knew about that says if a coach is fired or let go at this point, then players have, I believe it was 30 days to enter the portal, which at the point that we recorded a couple of weeks ago and talked about this, neither of the bigs that UNC ultimately contacted from West Virginia had entered the portal. So James Wagyu, I think is how you pronounce it, was the first one to enter the portal. He's since committed to Alabama, and then Okonkwo entered, I think, a couple of days later. And excuse me, it seemed like from the start there's certain earmarks to a UNC portal recruitment, and I think this one for us, behind the scenes, started to ring some of those bells. It is a pretty high academic kid, from overseas who's been in college for a couple of years, and we can get into his story soon. But his recruitment was very quiet. There was an initial phone call from UNC. There were no interviews given, and it just kind of had the feel of something where UNC was working behind the scenes and felt like they had a chance to close it. We know that before UNC had talked to, I would say a bevy of players that didn't just work out for whatever reason, post Wilcher decommitment and kind of in the middle of June and moving on. Excuse me. And this one just had a good feel for UNC. It was a position of need, position they tried to get. The transcript looked good, no character concerns, and it kind of fell in their lap because I don't know if, Bob Huggins' situation doesn't happen, if there's another player available. That fits that description because they had been looking and then just had struck out. So it was fortuitous timing, and UNC capitalized on it. It was a 2-week recruitment. Hasn't visited campus. They'll be similar to Brady Manick in that he committed to UNC without ever being on the campus, but we believe he's still going to take his official visit at the end of the month, and that'll be his chance to kind of see campus and be ready to roll in the fall.
Sherrell, we're not going to talk a ton about recruiting in general tonight. We'll save that for our show on Sunday as regularly scheduled. But I think we're seeing once again, Hubert Davis has some acumen in recruiting, regardless of the circumstance. Can you speak to how this is just another example of that, and how, again, a truncated window of 2 weeks, a kid that had never set foot in Chapel Hill, a kid that's only been playing basketball for a short window of time. We'll talk about that again in a little bit. What's next for Hubert to prove here as far as being able to convince a kid to play his college basketball at Chapel Hill?
Well, we've said before that, roster management is a 365 a year, 24-hour a day job. And I think how Hubert Davis has signed different players throughout, his, I guess, entering his third season at UNC, he's kind of done everything. He's got, the highly coveted transfer. He's got kind of the secret under the radar transfer. He's got the top 5 guard. He's got, I guess he doesn't have that top 15, big out of high school, but it's really the only thing kind of lacking from his resume. He's got the late riser, he's got the early riser. So he's done a little bit of everything on the trail, beaten, some of the major schools that Carolina had trouble beating the last few years for players. So it just shows that they're willing to do kind of whatever it takes to keep making the roster talented, to add depth where it's needed. And they'll do it up until, today is July 6th. So this is basically the same day that Dawson Garcia committed a couple of years ago. So we see that they're willing to take stuff into July to keep improving the roster. And they did it again this time.
And we will talk about this a little bit on our show, our regularly scheduled show on Sunday evening, just about assessing the roster, because Sherrell and Sean and I have talked about, middle of June, Father's Day time, we would get to that. So we're going to definitely dive into that a little bit this coming weekend. Sean, when you watch his film and when you see him on tape, this is a guy who played roughly 10 minutes a game for West Virginia last year. Like his blocks, or his average blocks per possession, is really high. His expected points per possession is really high. I know that's a stat you're fond of. But he looks like an above the rim player, even for a guy that's listed at 6'8". Is it just his timing? Is it the fact that he's got a real good nose for the ball? Is it athleticism and springiness off the floor? What is it that makes him play seemingly bigger than his listing?
Well, I love you using advanced stats. That's music to my ears.
I'm trying to help out the guys that everybody wants to hear, man. My job is to tee you guys up.
I think when watching him, I was looking at him almost as a 6'10" guy, and even when you said 6'8", I had to go back and look because he definitely plays bigger. You can see him on the defensive end where people would go at him in the post at times, and they go straight up. He just wait, and then he's gonna go face on and block your shot if you try to go straight up with him. It was a reported. This is coming from a lot of the high school articles, but he has a 7'2" wingspan, so putting him not in Jalen Washington territory, but pretty close. So I think that definitely helps on the block shots. From an athleticism perspective, he's not, I'd say, super springy, but he's definitely springy enough where he can get off the floor. Really, his main strength is he crashes the boards extremely hard. Looking at his Ken Pom numbers, he didn't play enough minutes to qualify for a lot of the leader roles, but just from a percentage basis, he would have been top 5 offensive rebounder, top 6 in block percentage in the conference. But he crashes hard, and there's a few possessions which we'll show in the video scouting report. But right off a free throw, he'll go up and he'll grab it, and he'll look to kick out. Sometimes he'll look to attack if it's open. But yeah, he's a beast on the boards, and he's springy enough with a good wingspan, and once again, not a uber athlete, but he's a guy that if he switches, he can move his feet. He's versatile, and I think that's why you mentioned the 10 minutes per game, and in Big 12 play, he was getting just under 12 minutes. So, to put that in perspective, that was more minutes than DeMarco Dunn was averaging for UNC. So it wasn't like he was only playing in once every few games. But I think he's strong and he's athletic. So it does make him seem a lot bigger than the 6'8" size.